The paper in my hand did not shake because I was heartbroken, but because the raw betrayal standing in front of me was almost too much to process. Looking across our living room, I watched my husband try desperately to hide the smug grin spreading across his face as he opally held another woman's hand. He assumed he had stripped away everything I valued, completely blind to the fact that his actions had just handed me a brand new beginning. My marriage to Caleb had started with a promise of absolute partnership, a bond built from our college days, when we shared cheap meals and dreamed of a grand future. I spent nearly a decade working double shifts to support his high corporate ambitions, putting my own career aspirations completely on the shelf just to ensure he succeeded. We finally built a beautiful life together in the suburbs. But the moment he achieved his dreams, he decided that I was no longer necessary. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday evening, when I unexpectedly returned home early from a business trip and found a pair of designer shoes near our front door. Walking up the stairs, I heard unfamiliar laughter coming from our master bedroom, discovering Caleb with a woman named Vanessa, a junior executive from his firm. Instead of showing remorse or offering an apology, Caleb coldly told me that our marriage had been dead for years. The weeks following that discovery became a psychological battlefield as Caleb and Vanessa moved into our shared home, trying to force me out through sheer intimidation and disrespect. They would openly plan their future vacations right in front of me, leaving their expensive jewelry and personal items scattered across the kitchen counters as a cruel reminder of my displacement. I stayed quiet during those agonizing days, carefully planning my departure while letting them believe they had broken my spirit. When the morning of the final separation arrived, I quietly walked through the house with a large cardboard box, systematically reclaiming every single item that belonged to my family lineage. Caleb watched from the kitchen island, laughing mockingly as I packed away old silver sets, vintage family portraits, and a beautifully preserved antique jewelry box that belonged to my great-grandmother. He told Vanessa that I was pathetic for clinging to worthless old junk while they kept the modern mansion. What Caleb completely failed to realize was that my grandmother had concealed her true wealth within the hidden compartments of that exact antique wooden chest. Hidden beneath the velvet lining were certified certificates for rare family heirloom diamonds stored securely in a downtown bank vault, a fortune worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. By letting his greed focus solely on our modern house, Caleb had willingly signed away the most valuable asset in our entire possession. The true climax unfolded in the driveway as the moving truck engine idled, and Caleb demanded to inspect my boxes one last time to ensure I was not stealing his property. I stood my ground firmly, looking him directly in the eyes and telling him that he had already taken the only things he ever truly valued, which were the empty house and his new companion. He laughed, waved his hand dismissively, and told me to get out of his sight forever. Driving away from that neighborhood felt like escaping a prison, the heavy weight of a toxic 10-year marriage instantly lifting from my shoulders as I headed toward the city bank. Retrieving the diamonds and securing my financial independence proved that patience and silence are far more powerful than loud arguments or dramatic confrontations. Caleb got the expensive house with its massive mortgage, while I walked away with absolute freedom and a fortune he will never know about. Looking back at the painful journey, I realized that some losses are actually the greatest victories in disguise, clearing out the toxic people to make room for genuine happiness. True wealth is never found in a fancy address or the material possessions we display, but in the self-respect we maintain when everything else falls apart. I lost a deceitful partner, but I ultimately found my own strength, and that is a trade I would happily make every single day.